What is going on, Governors? Chisgule here, and today we're going to update the legendary tier list for Attila and also Takeda, who we're about to unlock but haven't yet. If you like guides where we help you figure out which legendaries are the very best, you should like and subscribe, because this legendary tier list is something we update regularly, and we'll have a link in the description where you can check out all of the charts that we are about to present. Of course, we're going to put them up on the screen along with our commentary. Let's get right into it. Here is the system that I use for ranking legendary commanders, and again, we update this periodically. We rate commanders on a scale from S, meaning supremely awesome, they're better than all of the rest, to A, which is awesome, B, which is okay, C, which is less than amazing, and D and below, just don't use this commander for the activity that we're about to describe. Now, we rank each of these commanders across an overall rating, but then some specific categories. Those categories include city defense, barbarians and forts, the open field, rallying cities, rallying objectives, and we're really focused on Ark of Osiris, but also flags and forts, and then also defending objectives, again, inclusive of Ark of Osiris and flags and forts. So let's drop our overall rating onto the screen with, by the way, one other caveat to the rating system here, which is that we use a plus and a minus to show if something's a little better or a little weaker at a certain rating tier. And we also only do one S plus for each category. That is the commander we think is arguably the very best in the game. So let's go those overall ratings onto the screen. And you can see here, very little has changed. We're slotting in Attila at an S minus, which is still a commendable power level, but not completely backbreaking and game-changing. We're also slotting in Takeda at an A plus, which is probably the lowest I've slotted any legendary commander on their entry into the game. And we're just feeling very lukewarm about the fact that both of these commanders do normal attack damage, and they elevate that amount of attack damage slightly. To me, these commanders feel like counters to the support tree commanders that are very dominant right now. The reason that that is the case is that they typically reduce the amount of skill damage that they're taking. Saladin, for instance, reduces the amount of skill damage he takes. Well, guess what? These commanders don't do skill damage. If you look at the talents, there's also a bunch of talents that reduce the amount of skill damage taken. Well, guess what? These commanders don't do skill damage. They elevate normal attack damage. And so for that reason, we feel they have a very strong role countering a lot of what's happening in the meta. However, we don't think that that's so strong that it will overpower the meta and completely change the way the game is played. I actually think they're pretty fair additions into the game, and we have yet to test them fully. So before I made this video, I asked my wife if she would make me a tinfoil hat, because honestly, like, we're just guessing here. We need to get data. We will get data. This is my tinfoil hat. She said this was made her more happy than anything else all day long. So there you go, tinfoil hat. A couple other changes to the overall rankings that we do need to talk about. We did lower slightly our estimation of Edward. That is because while he is very, very powerful as a rally leader, we felt that his contribution was not as backbreaking as commanders like Saladin, Isongye, Khan, and Wu Zetian. We also slightly lowered our estimation of Tamaris. She seems like she is really, really awesome when paired with Edward, but that seems like it's her primary function, and that seemed sort of limiting. So we do have her at A+, which is still very powerful, but she does have more of a niche role. We also did elevate Constantine slightly up to an A+. This is another commander that has a pretty niche role. They're amazing in Ark of Osiris, but that's probably where I would limit their awesomeness to. So let's get into each of these specific categories. We'll talk about what's changed. We'll talk about where we rank Attila and Takeda. And let's jump right into city defense. For city defense, we adjusted up slightly our estimation of Richard. A+ was too harsh. S- is more appropriate. Richard is great on your city's wall. You should use him there. I just caution you that your hospital may overflow from all of the healing that you're doing, and your repair bill will probably be high. That said, he's a great commander there. Takeda, Attila, don't use them for this. That's really not what they're there for. Let's jump into the next category, which is Barbarians and Forts. For Attila and Takeda, I mean, I put them at B. The rating here doesn't even matter. That's really like not what they're in the game for. No other rating here did I change. This is business as usual in this category. No major changes to report since the last time we pulled together this list. In the next category is where things get kind of interesting. Let's go into open field. Now, open field is a category where I weight more heavily based on your march speed, based on your doing area of effect damage, or based on your doing something that benefits lots of other people. And while Attila does have elevated march speed, yeah, I'm just not hugely excited about his contribution, elevating his normal attack damage, and otherwise not making a big party contribution. I've got him at an A+. That's probably slightly undervaluing how good he will be, but doing damage to a single target is just not the benchmark for something like Ark of Osiris League when you're battling for the Ark of Osiris by the temple. You really need AoE or some other effects that are very powerful, and those don't exist on Attila. I gave him an A+. And I also gave Takeda an A for similar reasons. I do think he has 4 relevant skills in the open field, but I find myself feeling really, really, really unimpressed by elevating normal attack damage in most situations. He doesn't have AoE. He doesn't have a buff that's hitting everybody. He does have some march speed boost, but only if you're chasing someone down and you're doing normal attacks to them to have the chance to proc that. I do really like the healing in this third skill that provides a lot of sustain for this unit on the battlefield, but I honestly felt that we were looking for a bit more in an open field commander. This might be harsh. I expect to bump them out a little bit higher perhaps, but we're just going to have to see what those look like once they're expertised and how powerful they are. Again, if you want to take the Temple of Osiris by storm, you need lots of area effect damage, and they don't have it. I didn't adjust any of the ratings of other commanders, although it's possible, just taking a peek at this list, I do feel this is about right. It's conceivable that we could bump up Mehmed a little bit based on his AoE contributions, but overall I feel like the list is just about right. Let's move to the next category, rallying cities. And we only made a few changes to this category. We slightly bumped down Edward. We slightly bumped down Tamaris. And they're great for that activity, but there's a lot of options that we felt might be more powerful, especially with the addition of this new cavalry into the game. Specifically, I think Saladin and Attila as a pairing could be really, really gangbuster. Attila does increase damage to garrisons, and a city has a garrison. I marked him at an S, and that, or rather an S-, and that is a very strong endorsement for this commander for that activity. Pair Saladin and Attila, and you're cooking with gas. That seems like a really, really great pairing to me. You could also pair with a commander like Julius Caesar, Hannibal Barca, Freddy, Mehmed, of course, is Gangbuster. You got some options here. Charlemagne would be nuts. I think Attila is going to be pretty good, and I'm eager to see some of those rallies actually happen. KVK is around the corner, hopefully, and that's probably when we'll see some of that unfold. Until then, we're guessing. I put Takeda at an A-. It just doesn't seem like the sort of thing that this commander is optimized for doing. Next up is rallying objectives, and this is an interesting area. It is actually the area in which I gave Attila the strongest rating at an S. I think Attila is going to counter Wu Zetian, in part because he is immune to silence, which is very, very strong, in part because he's got some anti-swarm technology, which seems really, really good. This commander, I'm going to be watching very, very closely for how effective they might be in Ark of Osiris. Similarly, I put Takeda at an S-. I think that they have a really interesting role countering commanders like Wu Zetian for the reasons I was describing earlier, because they're elevating normal attack damage. They're not doing big special attacks, and they're not doing big active skill damage, and that skirts around a lot of what those commanders do to protect themselves. For that reason, I do think they will do well. When it comes to defending objectives, by the way, I guess one more thing for rallying objectives. I think we slightly overrated Charles Martel. For a time, we felt that from our KVK experience that Alexander the Great and Charles Martel were the very best pair for rallying a flag. But I do think that you could do probably a little bit better these days. We bumped them down to an S-. Okay, now, defending objectives. This is an interesting category. There are a few changes. We can first talk about where we put Attila and Takeda. I've got Attila at an A flat, so just an A. This is really not the thing they're there for. If you had to defend an objective, you could. The fact that they won't get silenced is nice. The elevated counterattack damage is good. That is good. Reducing the attack of a target is good. But, this is just not what the commander is here for. In a similar vein, I put Takeda at an A. I think that really neither of these commanders should be used for defending structures, also in part because you got to have all cavalry to take advantage of all of the punch that this commander can offer. So again, not commanders I would use for that activity. I slightly overestimated, I think, how good Saladin is in this capacity. I had him in an S-, and I think an A+ is more appropriate. In a similar vein, I don't know why I had Edward and an S. I guess he could be really, really good for defending against a rally, a single rally without a swarm, but that seems like an unusual activity. The reason that I rated him that way is because he does so much damage to the primary target that seems really strong. I now would say he's probably more of like an A+, and I think that's a more appropriate rating for Edward for defending a structure. There is a commander that we bumped up a whole heck of a lot in this category, and that is Constantine. We bumped up Constantine to an S, and the reason that we bumped them up so substantially is that in Ark of Osiris League, they're just so good at stalling that you really can hold up an enemy force for a very long period of time and provide your own forces a huge amount of time to go and reinforce. OV has really showed us that that's the case, and they are the Ark of Osiris League champions. So they use this commander. They seem to know what they're doing. It could be the very best, although I'd argue Wu Zetian's probably a little bit better, but Constantine is very, very, very effective. The reason I had rated them lower before is that Constantine is very much, in my opinion, countered in the form of several commanders. That includes primarily Alexander the Great and also Khan. Let me talk about why. The first skill here reduces reduces the target's attack by 40%. A 40% attack reduction sounds really good until you realize that, you know what, Alexander the Great is actually immune to that attack reduction by virtue of the second skill. Because he is immune to all damage reduction effects, that includes attack, I would just use Alexander the Great to counter this commander. In addition, Constantine's got that big heal on the fourth skill when they get below 50% health. This is countered a little bit by Alexander the Great as well, reducing the effectiveness of that healing by an upwards of 30%. And okay, there won't be 100% uptime on that healing reduction, but the fact that it can overlap there seems really bad to me. But look, that's why I thought Constantine wouldn't be as good. Turns out Constantine's really, really good. And people are really enjoying using this commander. So I think S is an appropriate rating at this point for defending an objective. Whew. So, my friends, how do you think we did with these ratings? This did involve a tinfoil hat. We are kind of guessing on some of this stuff because These commanders are just getting into the game. We haven't even unlocked one of them yet because we got a generic wheel instead of the Takeda wheel. I mean, like, give me a break, right? We're going to be in the kingdom we're in now, Kingdom 39, until the Takeda wheel shows up. We're going to spin it max the first day. We're going to spin it max the second day. Then go to our new kingdom, which is 75. We'll spin it max on that same day we teleport to the new kingdom, which presumably will be a generic wheel. And then we can spin that wheel again for the third day of the wheel event and have gotten to 100 on both wheels, which is a pretty slick maneuver. That's what we're hoping to do anyways. If you liked this video, please do like and subscribe. It means a lot to me as a content creator. Let me know what you thought of these ratings. Are they on target or are they not? And until next time, you have fun smashing the kingdom.